Jake Muzzin just continues to have a bad year. Not to his fault, but since the playoffs, that man just seems to have been dealing with injuries over injuries, Alex.
Yeah, he has not had the best of seasons, and now he's out with a concussion. I just don't know what's wrong. Like I'm watching him play, and I'm like, I don't know if it's an injury, but it's been months, and it's been like this, and it is a little concerning. But I don't think it's fair for a single person to say them extending Jake Muzzin was a bad move. I think that's 100% hindsight. And I think it's unfair to do. I think the majority of people were very much saying extend Jake Muzzin. He is the Leafs' best defenseman, like who plays defense.
All around, yeah.
As much as like we've mentioned with a Jeff Petrie sample this year, I don't want to look back on just this season and say this is Jake Muzzin. I think I agree perfectly with what you said, Alex, where he was brought in to be that defensive defenseman guy, something that the Leafs haven't had in so long. And he performed. Like, I think Jonas Siegel put that when he was on the ice and he was playing the games, the Leafs were expected 18 more wins projected. And this year, I don't know, like he also mentioned in that Athletic article that we don't know what it is. Is it he's overcompensating for Justin Hall? Is it just, he doesn't really have a permanent partner right now? But it is, again, like the injuries, and he is turning 33, and we know how sometimes like those rough and tough kind of guys get. And I think to get this point, the way he's been playing still, I still think he's extremely valuable. Because if the one example I use is Josh Manson, as much as I love the guy, the amount of injuries that guy's had before 28 and 29, it's already showing in his game.
Again, Muzzin's the victim of, I was on a really, really good team. I played a really big role there. And, but once he gets to the playoffs, that sort of experience will make a big difference. Right now, because of that injury and that, the second pairing for Toronto is currently Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin. Young guys that you want to see what their role is on the next man up mentality, because obviously once the playoffs happen, injuries are going to hit. I don't need to pick on Muzzin, but obviously there's been a few playoffs where he's been out, and you need to fill that gap. Along with that is you get a really good sense of how they can play here, and maybe that affects the deadline, because also in 32 Thoughts, number 11, Toronto isn't against clearing space to prepare for a deadline ad. And maybe that as defenseman, I know we sort of spitball, maybe not John Klingberg. I know you're against another gentleman by the name of Big Benjamin Sherratt. But this is a good sort of test for Toronto in the right time, especially with how locked the East is in the playoff race right now. We basically know who are making this. So it's a pretty smart, not convenient because you don't want guys hurt, but a really good opportunity for some of those young guys in Toronto.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that it comes up against the Rangers, who are a very good team.
And have a fan who was waiting to rip you about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever. I don't care. Whatever. No, but I think we've seen it with Rasmus Sandin a little bit. And again, he's going to have to prove that again tonight and over the next few games as a second pairing defenseman.
Yeah.
But I think what will be the biggest test of them all is Timothy Liljegren.
Yeah.
Who has, surprised many this year in terms of being able to stay up, because that's kind of been his thing the last few years, where he's been given some games but never stuck in the lineup. But this year he has. So again, he has to prove that he can also take those next steps. He's like 22 years old. He's not an old guy. He's still quite young, and there is room for improvement for Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin. But again, my personal opinion, tonight's biggest test is for Timothy Liljegren.
Yeah, I'm excited.
April will be 23, by the way.
He'll be 23. Okay.
I'm excited. Like, I think the biggest thing with Timothy Liljegren was whether or not he could be exposed to these types of big games, or he could be given the minutes he's had. Like Rasmus Sandin's, I think he's been through it already. So I think it's time for the Leafs to really see, like, okay, what do we really have with these two guys, and what can we see in terms of a ceiling here? And I don't think you're going to get that unless you actually give them the minutes.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are people bullying Steve Dangle?
Yeah.
I missed this. What's been going on?
Well, obviously they blew a few leads. in the last 4 games.
And he's to
Didn't they
blame.
blow like a lead in every game on that road trip?
Except Arizona.
Yeah.
Oh, which they
Yeah, they lost.
Thank you for winning that game, by the way. It really helps
problem.
Montreal get to last. I appreciate
No problem. No, I think here's the thing is there's these really divisive extremes. Yeah, that word. Whatever Daniel said. So divisive. Sets of fan bases within the Leafs fan base where it's like just pure extremes. Like for absolutely no reason. Like there's one who's like, yeah, this is a good team and they'll win the cup. And then there's like the other end with like Steve Simmons and Michael Tracos. And it's like, no, this team is horrible and whatever. And I think Steve's very much in the middle of it, as am I. Like my opinions, I mean, like you have to look at it realistically. This team in the last 4 years have not won a playoff round or a qualifying round. This team has blown multiple leads over the last, I don't know, day one of Mike Babcock. Like it's just, I'm not going to get as mad as Steve, but that's Steve's thing, man. Like I'm not going to blame him for it. That's Steve's thing. And I think he would admit that himself, but look at this team realistically and say, they've shown signs of what they were in the past, and that has to be concerning for everyone.